So we're going to do today Sif Ches. We're going to do Sif Ches, but in order to understand it better, let's just make a tamtzis of what is happening up until now. A sikum, a tamtzis. If you could put it in one line, how would you describe what's been explained until Sif Ches or including Sif Ches? What's the nakuda? Or what's at least one of the possible nakudas of the hemshech? The nakudas ha'inyan is, after all the biurim, the nakuda is that the whole Seder Ishtalshlus, the whole story that happened in Toyu, who is the sibba of all of these things? It all boils down to Kalim. That's the cover that's going all the way through. It starts off by saying the Oir Mitzadat Smoi would like to go up, but he's being schlepped down. He's nechas like Eish is nechas on Eitzim. So through the Oir Laki is nechas in a kli. How comes he's nechas in a kli? What schleps him down to a kli? You can't compare him to Eish, which is ba'oinus. So he says, no, it's berotzen, but it's all mitzad that the keli has a shirish, naila yosa, and that's ma'oira, the oir, to come down into the kli. So it all comes down that everything happens mitzad the kli. And it goes into the alarichas, the shirish of the kelim is higher, now it's kolos meseifon, etc. So now in this Sif Ches, he's continuing along the same thing. He starts off with a question. The question is, La'achar, we explaining the Maila of Kelim the Tikkun is that they are Kelim Rechovim which are able to be Sevel Hafachim. That's the Maila of Kelim Rechovim. Masha'in kin Kelim the Toihu are Kelim Ketanim, so they cannot be Sevel Hafachim. So but he asked the question, even though they're Kelim Ketanim, at least he should be able to be Sevel his own oil. Now, basically, if you're a goof and you have inside your neshama, at least your own neshama, you should be able to be Sevel. How comes that the Keli, Meli, can't understand Hafachim, like a child doesn't understand two opposites at the same time? Okay, but at least his own nefesh of the oil that's supposed to come in oil chesed, into clear chesed of Toyu, why does it have to have a shvira? Isn't he a Keli to his own nefesh? And on that goes this peirik, to explain the whole musig of B'chol ma'idecha means ma'oid shalacha, that even though it's the oil which is shayches to this keli, the oil chesed is shayches to kliya chesed, but this oil is B'chol ma'idecha, it's bligvul, and therefore it's too much for the keli. Again, the keli was mamshech an oil which is too much for him. He calls the hashpah of the oil, the halos man. He calls just before the end of the page, Reish Mem Zayin, he says, the line begins, Acha. He says, V'acha shekein, alidei halo asman, mis'oira ha'maitzel lahoya b'derech klolis ha'shefa. V'yocheliyas, mi'oir ha'chochma liyas chesed. He's mamshech an oir kloli, and it's too much, and therefore there's a shvira. Okay, and then from that he goes into a brackets where he says that what's he talking about, klolis ha'shefa? This is where he goes, once again he mentions akudim. Akudim is one of those things which are not talked about so often. It's like an unknown planet. What exactly is akudim? I have a question, a pashta question. Stammer, you thought of this question, but it's good to ask. We have a shaila and a bia as to why, let's say, kli hachesed of Toyu cannot be sevel his own oil. We have a whole explanation as to why. It's b'chol meidecha, it's bli gvul, it's boy from kloli. So how on earth does akudim manage with 10 oiris inside him in kli echad? Klotz kasha, no? It's one keli, 10 oiris. Huh?
10 different areas?
It doesn't say it's kelim rechavim. It says kli echad. Huh?
It's 10 different areas?
It's more poshut. What do you mean by that?
Then after it comes out.
There are 10 oiros or not. First, you know what? Let's first give a dugma. Stam l'ravcha de milsa. What would be a dugma of oilam akudim in in our Havana. So it's interesting. I found the Kutei Levi Yitzchak. He says a dugma of akudim would be Matan Torah. Matan Torah, one of the biur in the Matan Torah comes from akudim. So it was Esa Oris Bekli Echad. That's exactly what happened. Aseres Adibris Lachatchila was said B'Dibur Echad. Afterwards they were nisparet, but the B'Lachatchila all the Aseres Adibris were said together. So dugma of Kli Echad, Aseres Adibris, Esa Oris. Another dugma would be a tefillah k'tzara. A tefillah k'tzara is that you pack everything into a short tefillah, but everything's there. Bekitza, but it's all there. It's mu'at hamachzikas amaruba, like Havinenu or something like that. Or it says even the tefillah Shabbos and Yom Tov, you have one bracha emtzois, which is kol everything that you need for Shabbos. One bracha. A tefillah k'tzara. Another dugma would be la'olam yilmad adam yilamad adam l'talmida b'derech k'tzara. He packs everything in, but he only says a bekitza. Later on, the Talmud can work out from Diyukim, he can work out the arichas. But it's in one short thing, but it's machzik as hamaruba. That's a dugma of akudim, dugmois of akudim. But the question remains, is kli echod, and he has esa oris, and there's no shvira over there, it seems. Or is there a shvira? Is there a shvira in akudim?
That's what causes it to come to.
Huh?
That's what causes it to come
Can't hear.
to. That could be what causes it to come to the Kudim.
My hearing's not that good, you have to speak up.
He says that's what causes it to come to the Kudim.
That akudim causes the problems in Nukudim.
Because a Kudim can't handle either.
Akudim can't handle it either.
I don't know.
What's that?
We're changing history. There's two shviras.
There's two?
Two shviras.
Two
First,
shviras.
I couldn't have had a shvira about it. Also.
Well, in most places, Shviras HaKelim only happened in Toyu. That's how it's explained in most places. All the Nefelus HaNitzetes in Erim HaToyu, and even in Erim HaToyu Gufa, the Ikar Shvira is in the Midas, starting from Das. Ma'ashenkin in Moichem. Where does it say that in Tanya? No. We state in Tanya that the Ikar Shvira is in Midas, more than Moichem. Any Tanyas available? A regular, simple Tanya. Thank you. Perik Lamed Zayin. Ma she'omer Razal she'Talmud Torah keneged kulon. Hainu she'Talmud Torah b'dibur machshava shem lubushim apnimiyim, etc., etc. וגם מהוסם של בחינס חב"ד מקליפס נגה שבנפש החיונס נכלולס בקדושה ממש כשעסק בתורה בעין ושכל. ואף שבהוסם ועצמם של המידס חגס כולו לא יוכלו להם הבינונים להפכים לקדושה, היינו משום שהרע חזק יסע במידס מבחב"ד. מפני ניקוסם שם מהקדושה יסע ידעו לידי ידעו. There's more unique in Midas than there is in Meichen, even though not to mix it up with Perich Tes in Tanya, where he says that Chachmas Chitzonis is Pegam more than Midas. That's mitzad. It's an Edel, a higher place, so it's more for Begam. We're not talking about that. Where was the Ikar Shvira? The Ikar Shvira was in the Midas. And Meichen, it says it wasn't Mamish Shvira, it was a Nafila, and then on the higher level, in Chochmah, it says it wasn't even a Nafila, it was just a Bittel Tzas. It's all, as you go higher, it's less of a Shvira. So, based on that, Akudim, there's no Shvira.
Why you have to say it's connected to Torah too?
Huh?
Why you have to say that it's connected to Torah too?
He doesn't say it beferish. Okay, you want to argue, you can. I'm not going to fight with you on this one, but this is what it means.
Say a lot of times we explain that you look at this because there's a lot of conspiracy that we give to the fact that there's a lot of conspiracy that we give the fact that there's unique from Midas more than Mechem.
Why?
Saying it's all because of the Sheish.
Why? How comes that you can be Maila Muhusam Vatzmusam of your Meichin by learning Torah Be'iyun, but your midas stay the same? He says clearly a Beinani, even if he davens like Rabbah and Kiyoshin Domi, that's all he is. He's asleep. He's going to wake up. I heard once from a Mashbir in Wolf, he said, what happens after a good nap? So the Nefesh Baham has been sleeping during davening. What happens afterwards? So it could be worse after davening. So the nefesh bahamis, the behema b'mehusa v'atzmusi is not, he's never changing. You're shayla to the machshava di b'maisa, but you're not going to change it. He's a behema be'etzem, that's it. Unless you're a zeicha to become a tzaddik and that, then you change over a bit of his hapcha. But for a beinani, kol yomov is iskafir. That's been a get to midas. Here you see, when it comes to Isaac B'Torah, he says, Muhusam v'atzmusam shebechinas chabad miklipas noiga is nichlal in kedusha mamish. And the Rebbe brings it down. Which Maimah? Torah Tziva. Look, Torah Tziva Chelik Hey brings it down the Ha'ora. Anyway, that was just a source for you can see the difference. But Akapon Bados steht mefurish that the Me'ika Shvira is in Midas, and as you go higher, it's less and less. But it happens to be that while we're on the subject, it happens to be that the Mittler Rebbe writes in the Siddur, in the Drush Sha'acha Aleinu, which I don't know how it begins, but the Drush Sha'acha Aleinu, he says there, Shvira Sakedim in Akudim. And he says it not just there, he says it a few times. And the Rebbe Rashab brings it down in Mem Hey or Mem Vov, and asks on it. And in Samach Hey, he brings a mocker in Eitzes Chaim that it does say such a thing. Again, the Lashon is not Shvira, but Bittul, Kedimyan Shvira Shebetoyu. But in Toyu, it's Shvira Misa Mamish. But in Akudim, so the East does talk about sometimes there's a Dachistik Shvira. But I'm not going on that line of Akudim. We're going according to what it says, B'derech Klal. B'derech Klal, Akudim is fine, untouched. The problem starts in Toyu, and even in Toyu Gufi Midas. So the question is, based on that, why in Akudim is there no Shvira? If it's one Keli and Esa Eiros, the Shvira should be more, not less. Even we'll take on those places where it says there's a shtickle shvira in Akudim, it doesn't mean a shvira mamish, it means a bittel. The Lashon is bittel, kedimyan, a bittel, but it's not mamish. So why not? So let's first, the truth is he already gave us what's the mashal that we use for Akudim in Keichas HaNefesh? What mashal do we use for Keichas HaNefesh? Huh? You have to speak up.
Etzem HaNefesh.
Almost. He brought it earlier. Page Reish Mem Hey. Let's look at the line begins Deba Akudim. There he's actually saying the mile of Tikkun over Akudim, but if you look in Reish Mem Hey, the line almost halfway down, he says Deba Akudim. He says, "Hagam sheim klulim yachad hainu she'imdim kulim ba'ashra achas bebechinas atzmas ve'edim nikolim u'metzias bifnei atzmam ve'eina yishayach leima shehem hafachim zeh mezeh v'nimsa de'iki iskalas u'masha klulim b'ha'etzem u'kmei keiches shehem be'etzem ha'nefesh." So that's the moshel. So then if that's the case, so what's going to be a moshel for Ak? Which is even higher than Akudim. So let's make a shtickle seder in the Keichas HaNefesh, therefore we'll understand how it works up there. How many Keichas can you name in Madregas of Keichas, starting from Etzem HaNefesh or starting from Keichas HaGiluyim to the Etzem HaNefesh? How many Madregas could you be mefaret? So we'll do it like this. This is B'derech Klal how it goes. Keichas HaGiluyim, we know is Keneged Esas Sfiras. It's Mefurish in Tanya in Perik. Huh? Gimel. Right. So the Esas Sfiras are Keneged, the Esas Keichas Keneged Esas Sfiras, Shinishtal Shlomehen. Those are the Esas. Those are Eiris Bekedim, Eirim Atzilis, Eirim Atikun. Those are Keichas HaGiluyim. What's before Keichas HaGiluyim? Huh?
Ratzi.
No, I'm not talking about Makifim. I'm talking about the Esas Sfiras before they become Giluyim. Anything higher than Giluyim can be called Gnuzas and Makairis. But how many levels do we have? So Bechlolas, we have another 3 levels. We'll go like this. Keichas HaGiluyim, Keichas Hiyuliyim. Hiyulim would be, for example, the Chochma would be Keich HaMaskil. He can be Maskil HaSkolas, he can be Mechadish HaSkolas. If he's learning something and he tries hard, his Keich HaMaskil will be Mamtzi HaSeichel. So what was the Keich HaMaskil before he was Mamtzi HaSeichel? What's inside the Keich HaMaskil? It's a Hiyuli to Seichel. It's like the Keich HaTzmicha Sheba'oretz is Hiyuli to all types of tzmachim. What's inside the earth? Nothing. It's a Keich to make apples. So there's no apples hiding in the ground. So there's no Haskolas in Keich HaMaskil. The Keich HaMaskil is Mamtzi Haskolas. So what is it? It's a Keich Hiyuli. Now let's take these Keichas Hiyulim to their Sheirish. they don't start off as koiches hiyulim, they start off in the nefesh. So there's koiches hiyulim haklulim be'etzem hanefesh. Haklulim be'etzem hanefesh. So this is koiches hagiluyim, koiches hiyulim, and this next level is called koiches hiyulim atzmiyim, or koiches atzmiyim, depending on what the Maimon wants to say, but more or less those are the lashonis which are used. Hiyulim atzmiyim. That means we're taking these koiches all the way back to the way they're kolol in the etzem hanefesh. When they're kolol in the etzem hanefesh, is there anything left of the mitzias of the koyach? So b'poel, it's not a mitzias. It's called the halim she'ena b'mitzias. But there is sof kol sof something there, because you're saying there are eser koiches hiyulim atzmiyim. Atzmi means shayches to the etzem. So you have koiches hagiluyim, koiches hiyulim, koiches hiyulim atzmiyim, but you're still talking about koiches. So bedakas to dakas, there's something there. Now let's go to the etzem. Are there any koiches in the etzem itself? If we're talking about the etzem itself, we don't say that there's koiches in the etzem. We start off with the word etzem, not koiches haklulim benefesh. We say etzem noisei koiches. Etzem noisei koiches means there's an etzem echad poshut, which we know from experience that 10 koiches come out of it. But what do I have here? An etzem echad poshut. It's one mitzias, which is not made up of pieces. So we have 4 madregas: koiches hagiluyim, koiches hiyulim, koiches hiyulim atzmiyim, or koiches atzmiyim, and etzem noisei koiches. Let's take the top 2. That would be ak and akudim. Ak is etzem. It's kaviyachol, the etzem hanefesh of the whole Seder Shtalshus. Everything's there, but it's not a mitzias. Yeah, akudim is the beginning of the mitzias of the koiches. They're beginning to become a mitzias. There are already 10 things. But the okud b'kli echad, it means they're all together. They're koiches haklulim be'etzem. That's what he said before on the page. Koiches haklulim be'etzem. So the moshel of akudim is koiches haklulim, koiches ha'atzmim haklulim b'nefesh, and the moshel of ak would be etzem ha'nefesh. Atzilus would be koiches hagiluyim. The question is, what's going to be the hiyulim in between? That would either be keser, or atik, or it would be in the kav of olam hatoyu. That would be olam hatoyu. That would be hiyulim b'yachas to atzilus. What? Say it again.
Usually say the mashal for tayu is gila the keches atzmiyim.
Oh, hold on. That's it. I'm getting to that. Now that we know that the koiches hiyulim atzmiyim are in akudim, we can understand better what he says now in the Maimon, when he says that the koiches were atzmiyim, and that's what caused the shvira. If you want to have a gilui of a koiches hanefesh to be misgala in a Ivari Haguf, or let's say from Chochmah into his head, you can't take the koich hiyuli atzmi and stick that in. It's almost like taking the etzem hanefesh and putting it inside his hand or inside his head. You can't have an etzem inside a prat. You can get from the koich hiyuli atzmi, should be nimshach a koich hiyuli, and from the koich hiyuli there will be nimshach a ha'ora into the moich ha'chochmah. And al derech zeh from koich hiyuli of chesed, we will nimshach into his leiv a hergish of ahava or whatever. But you can't take the koich hiyuli and stick it. It's like taking the koich hatzmicha shabaris and sticking it inside the apple or in the piece of wheat. It doesn't go. The wheat is a teitzah that has a ha'ora from the koich hatzmicha, and that's why it grows. So if you do take the etzem hanefesh, if you would be able to, in other words, in this case, if you take the koiches hiyulim atzmim, which is akudim, and try and stick that inside kelim, what do you have? Shvira kelim. The reason why in akudim there was no shvira is because the koiches were klulim still in the etzem. They weren't a mitzias nikeres. They didn't come out as a separate thing. They were still kolol in the etzem. And when things are still kolol, even though bedakas you can talk about eser koiches, but since they're kolol, they're not a mitzias nikeres, so they're not menagdim zelazeh, and they're not being dispashed inside a keli, inside kelim pratium.
But legabi the ur is not fleetful. But the ur legabi the kelim
is faket. The ur is even higher, but it's not mitzias nikeres. It's still kolol. Something that's still kolol is not a mitzias. When does a thing become a mitzias? When it comes out of his skalolus and comes out towards a keli. Huh?
That kolim is also no musik of kilim.
Say again?
There will be no musik of kilim in the chol.
There's no what?
Musik of kilim
hold on. We're going to get to the Keli in a second. The Koiches of Akudim are Koiches HaKlulim. Therefore, they're not a Metzias Nikeres. They didn't come out in their tziyur, so therefore they're not affecting anything. Now the Shari is sof kosof, but it says there's a Kli Echad. What's with this Kli Echad? So the answer to that is that one of the Chidushim of the Rebbe Marash, he says that the Keli, when we say Kli Echad, means the Kli is Echad. Meaning to say the Kli is also not a Metzias. And the Rebbe said this, with Signonach Ktsas, in Tafshin Lamed Aleph, is a famous Maamar, Podavishal in Tafshin Lamed Aleph, where the Rebbe basically chazed over a whole shtickle from Tafkuf Samaches. And when he came to this Indian, he mentioned this word, that what does it mean as the Keli in Akudim? It means a shoyrish of a Kli, it's not Mamish Metzias. In other words, with the word the Rebbe Marash, that when it says it's a Kli Echad, it means the Kli is also Bechinas Echad. What does it mean it's also Bechinas Echad? That it's not Nishki Metzias. If it's Kipshuti, a Keli, and you bring Esa Eiris into the Keli, it's going to be an explosion. It's not going to work. But the Kli Echad means that it's Bedakas, it's a shoyrish of the Haschola of a Metzias of a Kli. It's a shoyrish for a Metzias of a Kli. It's not Mamish a Metzias of a Kli. That's why B'derech Klal there's no Shvira in Akudim, because there's not a Metzias of a Kli. That's a Pshat Kli Echad.
What purpose does the Kli serve?
It's a shoyrish for having real Keli. So if we were going to size up what is Akudim in simple language, Ak is the Rotzen Kloli of the whole Seder Shtalshalos. Akudim is the beginning of Oiris Pnimiyim, Oiris, 10 Oiris, and it's the beginning of the shoyrish to have Kelim. So Akudim is a shoyrish for Tohu. Once you have Akudim, you can come to Tohu. You have the 10 Oiris, but the problem is, when they came out of Akudim, each one came out the way he is in Akudim. He wasn't miszamtzim. He came out, as the Lashon over here is, bebechinas atzmiyim. They came out as they are kolul. That's how they came into the Kli. So the Kli can't take that. It's b'chol meidach. It's too much. It's like a besura b'seibis, which the Keli can't take.
When did the Keli become?
What's that?
When did the Keli become a real Kli?
Why did he become a Kli? You've got to speak up. I pushed it. I get to my age, you hear what's going on. What's that?
He said it. When does it become actual Keli?
In Olam HaToyu. That's when it becomes a Keli.
Right.
But the problem was the Kelim were Kelim Ketanim. And since they were Kelim Ketanim, so you take the powerful oil and stick it into Keli cotton, it's going to make a shvira. So it comes out that the Keli is what, again, we're going to blame the Keli. This is the whole Nakuda. We're saying the whole Nakuda of the Tamtziv, all the Maimorim is everything goes back to the Keli. The Keli brings the oil down. So the Kelim of Toyu also brought down oiris. But what type of oiris did they bring down? He brought down oiris, which are oiris atzmiyim. So far, so good.
What about that Keli? What brings down oiris atzmiyim?
Say again?
What about the oiris of Toyu brings down oiris atzmiyim?
The Kelim were mamshich b'halois man. They drew down these oiris from Akudim, and the oiris were too much.
Why did he bring that out?
Yeah?
What's the halas man to bring that out?
We said Kelim also always do halos man. Kelim are mamshich and oiris. And the Kli cotton is what's that?
Is that the fact that the Shiur is there?
Sorry, you have to speak slowly.
Yitzhak.
The Kelim are mamshichim oil, which is too much, and that's what he says on the page over there, that they're mamshich halois man misoyra hamaitzel lahoy b'derech klolis hashefa. Okay, it's interesting, by the way. Said that this is a chiddush of the Marash. As far as I know, it's a chiddush of the Marash. That what's it mean Kli Echad? It means the Kli is not a Metzias; it's a bechinas bittul, right? It's interesting that Rebbe Marash seems to have chiddushim all about Kelim. First one is the Eisis Ereshim. I don't know if you've heard about this. The Eisis Ereshim Lifnei Atzimtzum, Loi Noga Behem Atzimtzum. That's a big chiddush, which needs a whole explanation. Then you have Akudim, which just said Kli Echad means that the Keli is bechinas Echad.
First one was what?
And the
Kapos was?
what's that?
The first thing is what Macheks with Kapos was, no?
Yeah, that was the whole nice of the That shows what a big chiddush is. Right, then you got the Akudim, and then down here, which was mentioned earlier in the Maamar. Where was it? In the end of Sif something. When we talked about Neshama and Guf. Yeah, the end of Sif Vav. He brings down from Eila Toldis Reish Lamed Zayin, which is something the Rebbe is always mitzayin to this inyan, that La'asur Avoi HaNeshama Nenis Min HaGuf, Nizaynis Min HaGuf. Nizaynis Min HaGuf. In other words, the Guf is going to have a higher Sheirish, and the Neshama is going to be Makabel from the Guf. So it comes out right here. The Keli, the Maila of the Sheirish Akli. That's what we said at the end of Sivov. Yesh Lahoye, that the inyan of the Reb Marash is Tiferes, right? What state of Tiferes? Pesach Eliyahu, Tiferes, Gufa. Yeah? Alter Rebbe is Chochma, the Middle Rebbe is Bin, and Tzemach Tzedek is Das. Then comes Midas. The Reb Marash is Tiferes. Tiferes Gufa. It's not Yesh Lahoy. Okay, but Akapan V'nachshin Yanenu. So we have.
Is this a separate beer than earlier? The Rebbe Marash's Kiddush, or is this a deeper shot? When you said earlier that there was a bittul in the Kalim, Kidugmas.
No, that's Kabbalah. That's Eitzus Chaim, that there was a shtickle bittul in Akudim. We're not going to go according to that. But the Akhlal is not brought down. So that's brought down on the Siddur from the Michoel. No. This Rebbe Marash is explaining what's the pshat Akudim b'kli echod. He teaches kli echod means that the keli atzma is bebechinas echod. It doesn't teach ois and ganzen. The Rebbe Nishma said in the Samach Dalet teaches ois. It means it's not a mitzias mamish. It's not a mitzias nikeres. Therefore, the oiris and Akudim are not mamish a mitzias nikeres. They're not separated, and therefore they can all be together. Right. Right, so now, going back to the inside the Maamar, I have to ask some of you the Shaila, I don't know if anybody came up with an answer. On page Resh Mem Ches, he says, V'oid yesh leilu. What's the second teretz? Resh Mem Zayin, he starts off.
It's a Grover Kalaprat. In other words, Keser, this Galus of Keser is not a technical Kalaprat. It's I don't know, we were thinking maybe that's a not a good answer.
Sorry, I don't understand the answer. Let's just first see what's being said. Before the brackets on page Reish Mem Zayin, he says, so he wants to explain what's klolis hashefa. He's in the brackets. He starts and he launches into akudim. And then he says v'oid yesh loima. I'm assuming the pastors v'oid yesh loima is also a beer and what it means klolis hashefa. And he said, what's klolis hashefa? Because it's a beifun of klal. No, and what he said before that akudim is eiris atzmim is also an Indian of klal. I mean, what does he say? Why is it v'oid yesh loima? You understand what I'm asking? So.
It's a shvach, whatever, but it could be Kalaprat. It could mean many levels of Kalaprat. It could be a technical Kalaprat. It could be a emissaire Kalaprat. Like a Kal could just mean some things are glued together, whatever. Duct tape together. Or Keser is not shot that it's a murkov. Yeah, it's
atzmi.
Yeah, so it could be whatever. That's the difference in the Tibir. I don't know.
What's it?
Or we said it's B'chinas Ksardim, that it's mamish nichla, that it was niskala nefet, it's mamish still nichla, like akudim style, like we were saying.
Atzmi, okay.
Here, kal prat could mean it's a more pasha type of
Right. Okay, but how does that add on to anything that you said before? It's mafkis, no?
Yes. That was the best we could come up with.
You want to say something about that? What does it say? You have a beer? What's about a Shleimer? Bist du Golomb shot? Do you understand the question? Oije Shleimer. What's the Oije Shleimer? Page Resh Mem Ches. So, the Eis after, this is what one can say. The beer as to why Akudim, the spheres that are coming out from Akudim, are going to cause spheres Akelim, again, who are we going to blame for this? We're going to blame the Kalim. You asked for it, you got it. But what is the problem that causes Shvira? Can be seen from two sides. Mitzad the Ribi Ha'or or mitzad the Katnas HaKli.
He said in later taka that it's because the Katnas HaKli.
So he says before the brackets that the Keli is Mamshech B'Halois Man Klolis HaShefa. So the Rebbe Rashab, this is like said before, that if he says Yesh Leima Kavona, this is Hagois on some previous Maimah. This is a Maimah from Tovku Samach Beis, Lareka Hod Salamoyim, where we have a few hanochas of this Maimah. You have in Tovku Samach Beis Chelik Aleph, you have a Chelik Beis, and you have in the back of Derech Mitzisecha. So it's one of these nuschos that the Rebbe Rashab is writing Hagois on. So he says, Yesh Leima Kavon. In other words, he's out to explain what does it mean that the Keli is Mamshech Klolis HaShefa. So the beginning he says the Klolis HaShefa means that the Oir is Mamshech an Oir, which is an Oir Atzmi. So of course it's going to be a Shvira. Then he says, it's not just, Yesh Leima, it's not just because the Oir is an Oir Atzmi. Even if it wouldn't be an Oir Atzmi, there's another problem. The Keli is a Keli cotton. And we said before, how does a cotton take things away from Kloli? He doesn't really understand what he understands. Even what he understands, he doesn't really understand. It's all by from Kloli Machshava Achas. He doesn't get the details. He can't explain the details. So the Oijah Shleima seems to be that the Iki is mitzad the Klal Shabbat mitzad the Kabbalah's Hakli. He wouldn't know how to take it even if you would explain it to him, because he's a Keli cotton.
This beer shvachs of the R, but the chiddush of it is that it's mitzad the kelim.
Mitzad the Keli, and that would be, why does he have to add the because he wants to explain what does it mean Klolis HaShefa. It's a shtickle chiddush to say the first beer that is going mitzad the atzmius of akudim. So he says, Vayju Shleima, let's say b'pashta. So even mitzad the Kabbalah, he's makabel and leifin of an Oir Kloli. That seems to be miyashiv the Vayju. What's that?
The more question to err, you can never go.
Yeah. Even when it comes down to his level, it's still going to be he can't take it because he's a cotton, right? Okay, I think that's more or less it.
Explain a little more about the halas fan of Keli. It's mitzad the sheish.
Mitzad the sheirish, yeah. Whenever there's a keli, it's going to be me'er the sheirish. Right. The other thing which I should repeat what you asked last time about how actually does these harvests take place. Well, that's already in the next period, but it doesn't matter, we can talk about it just for a minute. So what makes a mitzias of a yesh? The koyach ha'insof, which is mahava, or the shviras ha'kelim? How do they work together, right? So how do we explain it? The nitzaitzes, the kelim fell down. And when the Koyach HaMahave is going to be Mahave, the Nivroim, he's Mahave through the Levush of Oisius Nishbarim.
The whole Shiur Shalshalos is kind of that story.
Up until Atzilus, everything.
The Shiur is great in the world. Atzilus, it comes through, Malchus Atzilus.
Oh, you're saying, yeah, okay, you're fine.
Similar
Yeah, everything has to go through.
What about the Oisius of Asar Amaris?
Oh, it's us. Oisius of Samar Monas. Amislabish and the Oisius, they go through the Oisius of the Shivrei Kelim. The Shivrei Kelim fell down. Asar Monas is the Malchus. And the Nitzaitis fell into Shem Ban, which is Malchus. That means to say that there's a scholarless of two things going on. There's Asar Monas, and then they go through a Lavush, a Parsa. So it's like somebody talking to you very high things, but he's speaking a different language. I don't know what he's saying. So it's a code language. So Malchus, in other words, basically when Malchus talks to Olam Abriya, Briya doesn't understand what he's talking about.
Google Translate.
Huh?
Google Translate.
They don't have that upstairs. It's only down here we have such
They
things.
didn't invent it back then.
Anyway, I think that more or less is the Nakuda. So if it were to be Masakim, what we learned, everything, the whole Nakuda, just remember, it's important to remember the Nakuda, the underlying theme that goes to the whole thing. That everything goes back to Kalim. Kalim are responsible for being Mamshech the oil, and if they do it wrong, they have Alois Man in an ofen of Katnus, a Rotzai, it's going to be Mamshech an oil which is not going to be Masuda. was just thinking, what would be a mashal gashmi for somebody who has a rotzoi? Because it says the same thing about a guf. I mean, kelim guf, the same thing. What would be a dugma of somebody who has a rotzoi, and he has a gilu, and he has a shvira? There's no shortage of examples for a shviras hakelim, but what would it mean that he has a rotzoi and he's a keli cotton? Is a simple example would be somebody who wants something too much. He wants something too much, and therefore he does things. For let's say even a good thing. Let's say he wants to go through Bavli Yushalmi overnight, and he doesn't go the first night because you can't learn it one night. So he's doing it. So he doesn't sleep. He doesn't eat. Basically, he's going to have a shvira after some point. His rotzeh is so strong. He doesn't give himself time. He's not misyachas to the guf. He wants the oil, and then he has a shvira.
You know, Marshall, that the etzem haratzi brings the shvira. That's a technical side ratzi because he's
That's a b'chol meidecha. That's a b'chol meidecha.
B'nei iron is a real ratzi.
How is it a good thing?
Whatever, that's a good thing.
L'poil, it is a good thing. B'chol meidecha.
Right. So b'chol meidecha. So he's going to explain later what would be a b'chol meidecha of toyu, and what would be a b'chol meidecha of tikkun, which is okay. B'chol meidecha has to be done the right way. As the Rebbe said once, I think b'shaychus to. They say when they get to Shlomo Kunin, the Rebbe once said, "Lachatchila riba" means that when you come to a situation, you go over the problems. So you can jump somewhere when you know where you're going to, but if you don't know where you're going, you can't just jump. Lachatchila riba, where to? You're jumping up onto the roof. Where are you jumping to? In other words, a bleak vul has to be also in a certain system, in a certain method. So that's b'chol meidach of tikkun and b'chol meidach of toyu, which is what he's going to discuss.